All right, guys. So part two, we're still on the Tame your insulin section of this. Remember, we did this just shortly before. So you might be thinking, okay, so what? Where do we go from here? How should I be eating? And the first thing that I want to say to you is that when you're eating right, okay, the way you will know that you're eating right is that food becomes pretty boring. It becomes pretty mundane. Now, I don't know what your reaction to that is, but I've taught many people this, and the usual reaction is, fuck. And this is something that a lot of people are not prepared to kind of give up. Their food has become so much for them that the idea of it becoming a little bit mundane and samey and, a bit boring, it kind of fills them with a little bit of dread. Now, what I need to tell you, and what I should get Paula to explain as well, is that, because Paula was like that. Paula, I remember Paula looking me in the eye, and she was tears in her eye and said, well, if I don't have chocolate, what do I have? And I was like, what? But this is kind of how we we think like this. But what I can tell you is that the more that we do something, just as our body normalizes the response to insulin and then we become insulin resistant, the way that your body will react to food, when you first start eating like this, you'll be like, God, this is strange, it's a bit mundane, I know what I'm doing, I know I'm controlling my insulin, but I'm not getting a great deal of excitement from this. Eventually it changes, and the idea of you eating all the crap that you used to eat would just seem mental to you. Okay, you've just got to do it long enough for that process to take place, but that is the reality of it. When you're eating right, your insulin should sort of slowly release, and then obviously slowly dissipate. The sugar, the blood sugar, and all this, it should slowly build, and it's much more controlled. Everything is much more controlled, and not only do you avoid this part up here where our body is physiologically storing excess energy as body fat, you're also avoiding all these other emotions that you attribute to eating crap food or making poor food choices. All right, because we're in here, and this is what I mean by it doesn't mean that you'll stop enjoying the taste of food. In fact, your taste is going to massively improve. Things that you ate before and thought, well, that's not particularly sweet, will suddenly seem really sweet. And as your taste buds normalise, you will have a bit of Coca-Cola or something like that, and you'll be like, my God, I can't even drink that, it's so sickly. Okay, so it does kind of normalise. But what I'm saying is that you don't have the extreme peaks where it's like, oh God, this food is beautiful, I love it, taste it, it's like incredible. But you don't have all this other stuff as well, so there is always a cost to everything that you do. And when you're having such extreme food, then you can expect some extreme health problems, or you can expect to carry excess weight or whatever. So this is how it kind of should be. So what did I do? I started changing the way that I put foods together in order to control insulin. Everything else was just a side, I don't know what. Okay, the main focus was insulin, controlling insulin and controlling what was going in my body to the best of my ability. Okay, and this is where weight started to fall off, because no longer was I trying to count calories and trying to second guess what's going on. Because here's the thing, you can have a 50 calorie meal and massively spike insulin. And this is what was happening. You might have your porridge in the morning, which is like, 250, 300 calories or whatever, a relatively low calorie meal, but your insulin is massively getting spiked. Or, you could have something that is 0 calorie, Diet Coke, for example. And the thing with Diet Coke is that you still get this spike. You still get this massive spike. And, when we talk about putting foods together and making the right food choices to control this insulin, what we're really talking, well, there's a few things to talk about. One of the basic things is this idea of simple and complex carbohydrates. All right. So, let me get rid of this. Ding, 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 ding. Don't know why I feel compelled to do the old dinky dinks, but I am anyway. So when we talk, people don't often understand this. They've heard the terms and all that kind of stuff, but they don't really understand what's going on, right? So we're going to draw our mouth into our stomach, and then a load of intestines, and you can imagine the rest. Okay, so this is the mouth. So stuff goes in here. Okay, so when we talk about complex carbohydrates, if we looked at it under a microscope, it'd be really quite complex. There'd be loads of molecules and loads of these branch chains and all that of food, so that when we put it into our mouth, okay, what happens is we can't really do with it anything with it until it kind of I'm going to draw this in here. In fact, I'll do this in a different colour. This is really, really important. Do this in red. This here, which we'll imagine is the liver. Okay, ding, ding, ding. So it's so complex. It's made up in such a way that our stomach and that, we can't really do a great deal with it. It's actually got to go down through the liver and get processed in the liver before it can start getting released out into the bloodstream. Okay, the sugars that I'm talking about. So you can see that this kind of, it's going to take, instead of being like this, bang, okay, it's actually like this, because it's got to go down and get processed by the liver, and this can take like 2 hours to it to happen. So you can kind of understand why the spike in insulin is much less. Yeah. A simple carbohydrate, as its name suggests, might be something like this, you know, where there's really small molecules. We don't have to mess around with it a lot. We put this into our mouth, and we have chemicals in our mouth that straight away start to break down these branch chains, and these molecules can instantly go into the bloodstream. Yeah, so if you have like a Mars bar, a chocolate bar, or something like that, it instantly goes into the bloodstream and the rest of the body. Okay, and this is what gives you your really rapid, sudden increase in blood sugar and sudden increase in insulin. All right, because it's really quick. Because a lot of our sweetness receptors are in our mouth. Okay, so the minute we eat a bit of sweet, bang, we get this insulin response. Okay, so this is the difference sort of between complex and simple carbohydrates. Now, no one really explained that to me. I knew you had to eat more complex carbohydrates, but I didn't really understand, you know, why and what the difference was. If you want a basic rule of thumb into, you know, how do I start eating more complex carbohydrates from this point onwards, the first easiest step you can do is, if it's white, cut it out. Okay, so white bread, white rice, white pasta, potatoes, bananas, yogurt, any kind of milk. There's lots of other health implications with eating dairy and drinking milk and all this kind of stuff. Think about it, it's a growth hormone. You know, there's lots and lots of research that it triggers cancerous cells in the body. But the biggest thing, if weight loss is your big thing right now, think about it. If you want to lose weight, why are you drinking a growth hormone? You know, why are you drinking a serum which has been designed to create rapid growth? You know, think about when a baby cow, a calf, drinks milk. You know, when it's first born, it needs rapid growth. When does a baby drink human, you know, breast milk? When it's first born, it needs to develop rapidly. You know, it is incredibly fattening. All right, not the greatest term, but you know, it is incredibly fattening. And it's white. So if we start to cut out some of these white foods, now obviously there's a few exceptions to the rule, okay, but it's a great place to start, where it's not too complicated. You know, look at it. Is it white, or is it made of foods that are high in white? Like obviously a chocolate brownie is brown, yeah, but we know it's got sugar in it, it's white. We know it's got flour in it, it's white. You know, and the first step you can make is to change to the brown versions of all these things. So brown bread, brown rice, brown pasta. You know, stay clear of potatoes, switch to sweet potato. You know, and all this kind of stuff. And that's a better first step. Now, eventually, we need you to, you know, we're gonna teach you about grains and all this kind of stuff, and we need to sort of, you know, change what we're doing in a few weeks' time. But this is a great first step. Get off the white stuff. You know, I know as people post their food in the Facebook group, and it's, you know, it is porridge or granola with milk, with fruit, with yogurt, with honey on top, and thinking, right, now this is a really good breakfast, and it's a great first step if you was having like your crap breakfast before. But we need to move on from that, you know, because that is not going to do. You might start losing weight initially, and actually, if your portions are small enough, you know, when we talked about, if we imagine our two lines and we talk about spiking the insulin to a point where any excess energy is telling the body to store excess energy as fat, up here. Well, if you haven't got the excess energy, then you're going to start losing weight. Does that I hope that kind of makes sense. So if we're starving ourselves, and this is the difference between starving and fasting, if we're starving ourselves, then there simply isn't an abundance of energy. You don't have the energy, you're not taking it in, which is why we can lose weight initially on a calorie controlled diet, but it doesn't last forever. You guys know this. How many times you've done a low calorie diet where we're controlling calories and it's gone to rat shit, much a few weeks down the line or whatever. Okay, and I've been there numerous times too. Okay, so be very careful of that. I'm sure there'll be questions. Get them in the Facebook group, and I will answer them. But this is kind of where we're going to finish up for this second video, part 2. We talked about simple and complex carbohydrates. The fact that when you're eating right, it's no longer an experience. It's no longer an event to eat. So many times we make eating an event. If we're bored, like, right, what am I going to do? Oh, I wonder what there is to eat. It becomes a way of us filling time. And God, how long is it going to take me to? Okay, so I've cleared the screen a bit there. So yeah, basically, what I want to explain here, when we're talking about making food being an event, a way of us filling time. I want you to imagine that this block here is a timeline for a day, and humans have got this need to fill time. We can't have a void. If there's kind of nothing happening, we really feel compelled to fill it. This is why meditation is actually really, really hard, and it's mindfulness and all that, because we have this natural propensity to want to fill gaps in time, and one of the things that when you start to reduce the amount of food you eat, or if you ever go on and do some fasting or something like that, you'll soon realize that when you've got, like right now, all this time is full, but when you stop eating, say you've got this period between 8 and 9 here, normally that'd be filled with breakfast. Well, now it's empty. Now there's nothing there, and you're like, what we're gonna do? And this, it's like you start hunting around the kitchen, doing the thing where you're checking all the cupboards and looking in the fridge, and like, oh, well, what am I gonna do? And you've got to work out some way of filling that time. Well, you're gonna have all these things. It's a bit like grief is a lot like this. When someone dies or you lose someone. Or you have a breakup or something like that, all of a sudden the periods of time which would have been filled up by this person, let's say you go and have a coffee with your mum every Monday between 9 and 12, well, now this time that would have been filled is just a void, and in your mind you're going, well, my God, I really miss her, and what am I going to do with my time? And you've got to create something else to fill that time, and it's a lot like this with food. And in a lot of respects, you're going to grieve for food. I know it seems a bit strange, but you're gonna kind of look back and go, well, normally I'd be eating right now. Or you look around and other people would be eating, and you'd be like, well, I know because of what Craig's taught me and Paul has taught me that I don't need to eat. And it's going to feel strange. And this is what I mean about when people sort out their weight and their eating, they fundamentally got to change themselves. It's not, you don't change what you do, you change what you are. So a little bit off topic. This is the end of part 2. Same again, as always, questions, get them in the Facebook group. And we're going to move on to part 3 now, where I'm going to talk about insulin and how it actually functions in the body. I'm going to teach you some stuff about way insulin works. I'm going to put it into a real simple way of understanding it, so you kind of know what's going on in your body, because some things are really much easier to adhere to and to apply when you completely understand what's going on, like the simple and the complex carbohydrates. You know, you might have gone, well, I know I need to do all this, but I don't really know why. Now you know, you can go, right, if I eat this bread, that's going to spike my insulin massively, okay, and if I've got excess energy, I'm going to store that as body fat, okay, or I'm going to make it really hard for myself to make a smart food choice later in the day, you know, and you will know all this, okay, so this is what we're talking about. All right, so I'll see you in the next video. Take care.